My parents let my sister drop out while pressuring me for straight ASO. I quit school, started a company, and now I fund their regret. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I thought my parents loved achievement more than love itself. Growing up, my house felt less like a home and more like a training ground. Every wall echoed with reminders. Work harder, be better, don't embarrass us. My parents believed success was the only proof of worth, and I, desperate to make them proud, became their obedient project. My mom kept a whiteboard on the kitchen wall with my weekly goals. If I missed even one, the silence at dinner was punishment enough. My sister, Lily, was different. She floated through life like rules didn't apply to her. While I stayed up till 3 a.m. memorizing formulas, she'd sneak out to parties and sleep through school the next day. I thought my parents would be furious, but instead, they'd laugh and say, "She's young, she'll learn." When I came home with a 97 instead of 100, they'd ask, "Who beat you?" I used to watch her from across the dinner table, hair messy, smile wide, wondering how she made rebellion look effortless. I envied that kind of freedom. For me, life was a checklist of expectations. I measured my worth in grades, trophies, and their rare nods of approval. Sometimes I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, exhausted but restless. I'd replay every word my father said that day, trying to decode his tone. Was that pride or disappointment? It was like chasing sunlight in a storm. One night, after winning a regional science competition, I overheard my mom on the phone with a friend. She said, "He's smart, but I wish he had Lily's charm." I don't think she realized I was standing there. That moment stuck to me like a scar. It was the night I learned that no matter how high I climbed, it would never be enough. And that was just the beginning of how their love for success would destroy everything that made me human. By the time I hit 17, I had already learned that fairness didn't exist in our house. It was a luxury reserved for Lily. She could fail a test and laugh about it. I could get a 95, and my dad would sigh like I'd ruined his legacy. I remember one morning when I woke up early to show him my report card, straight A's across the board. He barely looked at it before asking, "Why are your grades in English lower than last semester?" The drop was 2 points. 2. Meanwhile, Lily had skipped an entire week of school because she didn't feel like going. Mom brushed her hair affectionately and said, "You just need a break, sweetheart. Don't stress yourself." When I asked why she never told me to take breaks, she smiled. "You're stronger than she is. We expect more from you." That line haunted me. We expect more from you. It sounded like praise, but it felt like a curse. The more they coddled Lily, the more I became their scapegoat for everything that went wrong. When Dad got angry, it was me he yelled at. When Mom cried about family disappointment, it was always my fault for not trying hard enough to keep everyone happy. One night at dinner, I finally snapped. "Why does Lily get away with everything?" I asked. My mom froze, then said coldly, "Because she needs our support." "You don't." Lily smirked across the table, and my father muttered, "We're harder on you because you're capable." That sentence broke something in me. Being capable didn't feel like strength anymore. It felt like punishment. I went to bed that night realizing that love in my house wasn't something you earned, it was something you were born with, and I wasn't the lucky one. But what I didn't know then was that this imbalance wasn't just unfair, it was setting the stage for the betrayal that would define my entire life by my senior year. The cracks in my family's perfect facade were impossible to ignore. Lily had completely stopped pretending to care about school. She'd skip classes, sneak out with friends, and lie about her grades with a straight face. I thought my parents would finally draw the line. Instead, Mom said, "She's just overwhelmed. We'll give her space." I remember sitting there, holding my own report card days in every subject except one. Math, 89%. My dad's jaw tightened when he saw it. "What happened here?" he asked, like I'd committed a crime. I told him I'd been helping Lily with her assignments, trying to cover for her. His response, "Stop making excuses. Focus on your future." It was like talking to a wall. Every word I said vanished into the void of their expectations. The message was clear. Lily was fragile. I was a machine. The day Lily dropped out, everything changed. She came home with tears in her eyes, saying school wasn't for her. I expected my parents to be furious, but instead, they hugged her. My mom said softly, Your mental health comes first." My father nodded, his tone gentle. "We'll figure it out together." I stood there, watching the scene like an outsider. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream that I'd been drowning too, that I hadn't slept properly in months, that I woke up each morning with a knot in my stomach. But when I tried to speak, Mom turned to me and said, "Don't ruin this moment, okay? She needs our support." That was the night I realized I wasn't part of the family. I was part of their image. Lily got comfort, compassion, and care. I got expectations, pressure, and silence. And while they were busy protecting her from failure, they never noticed how close I was to collapsing under the weight of their perfection. Getting accepted into a top university was supposed to be my ticket to freedom. For a brief moment, I thought things might finally change, that maybe, away from home, I could breathe. But the truth was, my parents didn't loosen their grip. They just found new ways to tighten it. My first week on campus, Mom called every night at 9 p.m. Sharp, if I missed a call, she'd text, "You're already neglecting family." My dad made me send him my grades at the end of each month. He even asked for screenshots of my study planner to make sure I wasn't slacking. I didn't tell anyone about it. My friends wouldn't have understood. They came from families that celebrated independence. Mine treated it like rebellion. Meanwhile, Lily had started working at a small cafe. She posted pictures online, smiling, laughing, free. Mom would comment things like, "So proud of my hard-working girl, hard-working for pouring lattes." I remember staring at those posts, in my dorm, surrounded by textbooks, wondering what kind of world I was living in. During one visit home, I tried to talk to my father about switching majors. Engineering wasn't my passion anymore. I wanted to study business, something creative. He slammed his palm on the table. "We didn't sacrifice everything so you could chase hobbies," he said. I stared at him, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "But it's my life, Dad." He looked me dead in the eye. "Not until you can pay for it yourself." That sentence cut deep, not because of what he said, but because he was right. Every dollar they gave me was another chain. I went back to campus that night, feeling smaller than ever, my own dreams now filed under disobedience. And deep down, something inside me started whispering, maybe the only way to win is to stop playing their game. By sophomore year, my life had become a loop of anxiety and exhaustion. Wake up, study, report to my parents, repeat. I barely slept, barely ate, and lived in constant fear of disappointing them. It wasn't about grades anymore, it was survival. One night, I got back a midterm paper with a big red C+ at the top. I remember staring at it, my vision blurring. My first failing grade ever. My hands trembled as I took a photo and sent it to my dad before he could ask. I expected disappointment. What I got was rage, he called within minutes. "What is this?" he barked. "I messed up, Dad. I'll do better, do better. You're throwing your life away. We've invested everything in you, and this is how you repay us." Every word felt like a punch. I apologized again and again, but nothing stopped the storm. When he hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Please stop stressing your father. You know how hard he works for you." That night, I sat on my dorm bed staring at my laptop screen. I hadn't even failed the course, but I felt like my entire existence had collapsed. My chest hurt from trying not to cry. I wanted to call them and say, "I'm not a robot, I'm your son." But I knew it wouldn't matter. 2 weeks later, Lily crashed her new car while driving drunk. I thought, this time they'll have to face it. But instead, they comforted her. My dad said, "We're just glad you're okay." That was my breaking point. That night, while staring at my reflection in the dark window, I finally admitted it to myself. Nothing I ever did would make them proud. Not because I wasn't enough, but because they didn't know how to love without conditions. And once I accepted that, something inside me finally snapped. A few weeks after that phone call, I woke up one morning and realized I couldn't do it anymore. My body was showing signs of burnout, constant migraines, shaking hands, and a stomach that twisted every time I opened my inbox. I'd stopped sleeping. I'd stopped feeling anything except dread. That day, I walked into the university registrar's office and withdrew from all my classes. No dramatic speech, no tears, just a quiet signature that felt like freedom and failure at the same time. Didn't tell my parents, not yet. I packed my things, moved out of the dorm, and rented the cheapest room I could find, a tiny space above a pizza shop that smelled like grease and dust. I bought a second-hand laptop and started looking for freelance work online, writing product descriptions, editing podcasts, doing whatever I could to survive. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, no one was checking my grades, timing my study hours, or telling me who to be. But freedom came with fear. There were nights I'd eat instant noodles by candlelight because I couldn't afford electricity that week. I'd scroll through social media, seeing Lily's smiling face as Mom commented, "So proud of you, sweetheart." The irony burned. 3 months later, they found out. My father got an email from the university confirming my withdrawal. The call came instantly. "You did what?" he shouted. "I needed a break. You lied to us. You threw away your future." Mom's voice came next, trembling but sharp. "You're just like your sister, lazy and ungrateful." They hung up without letting me explain. For days, I stared at my silent phone, waiting for another call that never came. I was officially cut off, financially, emotionally, and completely. But in that silence, something new began to grow. A voice I'd never heard before whispered, "Now, build something for yourself." The first few months after they cut me off were the hardest of my life. I went from being their perfect son to being completely invisible. My savings ran out fast. Rent was overdue. Some nights, I'd lie awake, listening to the hum of traffic below my tiny room. Wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life, I took every freelance job I could find, writing blogs for pennies, editing amateur YouTube videos, even designing logos on apps I barely knew how to use. My hands ached, my back hurt, but I kept pushing. There were nights I fell asleep sitting up at my desk because I couldn't afford to take a break. The worst part wasn't the hunger or exhaustion, it was the loneliness. I'd open my phone and see family pictures. Lily smiling at dinner, Mom and Dad standing proudly beside her. They looked happy, whole like I'd never existed. One night after another, rejection email from a client, I broke down completely. I remember sliding to the floor, sobbing into my hands until my throat went raw. For the first time, I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to exist either. I felt stripped of everything: money, family, identity. But sometimes, rock bottom gives you clarity. When the tears stopped, I opened my laptop again. I stayed up till dawn, researching how to start a business online. I didn't have much, just stubbornness and pain, but I knew how to work. I began small, taking consistent gigs, building a tiny client list, learning to negotiate. Slowly, painfully, something inside me began to shift. For the first time, I wasn't working for approval. I was working for survival, and maybe someday, freedom. That night marked the end of the boy who lived for validation. What rose in his place was someone hungry for control over his own life. Once I stopped chasing perfection and started chasing progress, everything changed. I didn't have investors, degrees, or family support, just a cheap laptop, restless nights, and an obsession with not failing. At first, I focused on small freelance jobs. Then I noticed something: most clients struggled to manage freelancers. They needed structure. That's when the idea hit me to build an agency that connected reliable freelancers with small businesses. A bridge between chaos and clarity. It started with just me and one other guy I met on an online forum. We worked out of our bedrooms, pitching to clients at 3 a.m., pretending to be a full-fledged company. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I learned to smile through rejection, to treat every no as a free lesson in resilience. Months turned into years. The sleepless nights paid off. Clients started recommending us. The agency grew from 2 people to 10, then 30. I hired freelancers who reminded me of myself, undervalued, overlooked, but burning with quiet talent. I built the company I wish I'd had when I was lost. Every milestone felt surreal. Signing the first major client, paying off my debts, buying my first car used, but mine. The day I hit my first 6-figure year, I stared at the screen in disbelief. I didn't celebrate with champagne or calls home. I just sat there whispering, "You did this without them." Meanwhile, Lily's life had stalled. She bounced between jobs, still living with our parents. I saw her social media post smiles hiding exhaustion. My mom even sent me a message once saying, "Your sister's been struggling lately. Maybe you can give her advice." I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to look backward yet, but deep down, I knew the day would come when the same people who once dismissed me would come knocking, because regret has a way of finding its way home. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was sipping coffee in my small apartment, now furnished, bright, peaceful, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID froze me. Mom, I hadn't heard from her in almost 3 years. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. But then I answered, "Dot." Her voice trembled, "Sweetheart, we need to talk." Something in her tone told me this wasn't just a casual call. She told me their finances were a mess. Dad had been forced into early retirement, and Lily was still figuring herself out. The cafe job was long gone, and their mortgage payments were falling behind. "We're struggling," she said softly, like the word itself was poison. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me wanted to hang up. Another part, the part that still craved their love, hesitated. Then she said the line that made my chest tighten. "We're proud of what you've become. You've done so well. Maybe you could help, just a little." It hit me like Dacia Vutha. Same people who once told me I'd thrown my life away were now calling me their success story. A week later, I visited home for the first time in years. The house looked smaller, older, colder. Mom greeted me at the door with tears. Dad stood behind her, quieter than I'd ever seen him. Lily avoided eye contact. It was like walking into a museum of my own past. At dinner, they made small talk, empty smiles, nervous laughter. Then Dad finally said it. "We're in a bit of trouble with the mortgage. If you could help us out." His voice cracked halfway through. For the first time in my life, I saw him not as an authority figure, but as a man afraid of losing everything. And in that moment, I realized the tables had finally turned. I don't think they expected me to say no. They had spent their whole lives believing I existed to fix their mistakes. But this time, I wasn't the obedient son anymore. I was the man they built through pressure and pain. We sat at the same dinner table where they'd once lectured me about grades and success. Mom served food like it was supposed to erase the past. Dad cleared his throat and said, "You're doing well now, son. Family helps family, right?" I looked at him carefully, my voice calm. Family helps family. When family was there in the first place. Silence. Forks froze midair. Mom frowned. "Don't talk like that. We did everything for you, did you?" I asked quietly. "Because from where I'm sitting, you did everything to me." Dad's expression hardened. "We pushed you because we wanted you to succeed." "No," I said. "You pushed me because you wanted to control the outcome. You wanted the version of me that looked good on paper, not the person I actually was." For a moment, no one spoke. Even Lily's breathing felt loud. Then Mom's voice cracked. "We just didn't want you to end up like her." I turned to Lily. She looked down, tears in her eyes. "You don't get it, Mom," she whispered. "You broke us both, just in different ways." Dad looked away, ashamed. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I took a deep breath, stood up, and placed a check on the table. "This will cover what you need," I said, "but don't mistake it for forgiveness. This isn't charity, it's closure." Their faces went pale as I walked out of that house. The night air felt cleaner than it ever had before. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I was walking away from it. A few days after that dinner, I got a call from Lily. I almost didn't answer, but something in me still cared. When I picked up, her voice was trembling. "Can we talk?" she whispered. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. She looked old or tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. Her hands shook as she stirred her drink, eyes red from crying. For the first time, I saw her not as the carefree golden child, but as someone just as lost as I'd once been. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything, for being their favorite, for watching what they did to you and pretending it was okay." I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so many years resenting her that I never considered she might have been a victim too. She continued, her voice cracking. "They made me believe I was special, but it wasn't. Love, it was control. The moment I stopped living up to their fantasy, they turned on me too. I can't even afford rent. I feel like I've wasted my life." Her honesty broke something open in me. I realized we'd both been raised in a system of conditional affectional, when where worth was a currency and approval was never free. I told her softly. "They taught us to measure love by usefulness. You believed you were loved for being perfect. I believed I'd only be loved if I never failed. Neither of us ever really stood a chance." She wiped her tears. "So what do we do now?" I smiled faintly. We stopped asking for their permission to exist. For the first time, Lily smiled too, not the fake one from family photos, but something real, fragile and free. We sat there in silence, two siblings finally unlearning the same lie. And deep down, I knew this was the real turning point, not revenge, not money, but release. A few months later, I got another call from my parents. This time, I didn't hesitate to let it ring. Whatever they needed now wasn't my responsibility anymore. But I wasn't angry. I'd moved past that. I'd learned that real peace doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from closure. By then, my company had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. I had an office, a team, and the kind of freedom I used to dream about when I was trapped behind textbooks. One morning, as I reviewed payroll, I realized I had more money than I'd ever need. That's when the idea came to me, not out of revenge, but irony. I paid off my parents' mortgage anonymously. No note, no signature. Just a silent transaction that cleared their debt and left them wondering. A week later, my mom texted, "Someone paid off the house. Was that you?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Don't worry about who it was. Just live your life." She sent back a single heart emoji. I didn't respond. That night, I took a long walk through the city, breathing in the cold air. The noise, the lights, the light fit, all felt distant yet peaceful. I thought about the boy who once stayed up until 3 a.m. studying for validation that never came. The boy who thought love had to be earned? He was gone now, before heading home. I donated a large sum to a scholarship fund for students forced to live under impossible expectations. I named it the Freedom Grant, not for my parents, not even for Lily, for the version of me who thought he had to be perfect to deserve peace. And as I stood there watching the city lights flicker, I finally understood I didn't just build a company. I built a life fueled by the very thing my parents never gave me: unconditional self-worth